I'll try to get through this quicker. As I flip through the pages, I realize it's taking me a long time. So I don't want to lose my audience, especially Familia who want to learn about their ancestors. So this is going to be talking more about mystery great Zuni grandmother. And my tios used to talk about my great grandmother, the mother of Sara Landavaso. So this will be about her mostly, and her what I found out about her people, who she may have been. I still don't know her name. But she's my great mystery that I kept hearing about in little bits and pieces that made me so curious. To review, this is a photo of Jesus Landavaso in his early days, sitting to the right of Juan Garcia, who I found out they had a lot of problems between them, and people referenced that they fought over Maria Gomez, and I'm thinking that might be the woman who is the mother of my great-grandmother, Sara Landavaso, the Zuni servant. So these are the two guys who fought over land and women and such at the time. After taking many notes about the family stories, I've come up with the possibility that my great-great-grandmother could have been given the name Maria Gomez, a name that was mentioned in reference to the woman Jesus would go off with, hop the fence with, the Indian who had Sarah. She may have been one of the servants/slaves of Jesus and Manuela Landavaso. She and Jesus birthed Sara. Sarah's half-sister, Maria Jesus, was likely birthed from Jesus and his Navajo servant-slave. In the mid-1800s in New Mexico, many natives were taken as slaves by the Spanish. It was an industry, though slavery was supposedly abolished via the 13th Amendment of the Constitution throughout the rest of the United States on December 6, 1865. So that's why here in the territory of New Mexico, they were property, but called cooks and servants. Also, Catholics, mostly the Spanish people here, baptized these natives and gave them names. Frequently the names Maria for the Virgin Mary, or Jesus if it was a boy for Jesus Christ. So we can never really know their true indigenous names. I wanted to know more about this place called Alamo, New Mexico, where my uncle said their grandparents traveled now and then to visit relatives. It is about 30 miles northwest of Magdalena, where Jesus lived with his wife and servants. So it all started to make sense. Other places around Magdalena and Alamo were mentioned many times in my family's oral history. Puertecito, Cubero, which was part of the land grant that the Landavasos received, Riley, Santa Rita, Atarque, Cebolleta, Cebolletita, Polvadera, Jalarosa, San Rafael. Then I found this article about Alamo, where my uncles said they used to go visit Sara's mother, who would have been the Zuni person held captive. It was confusing to me when I read about Alamo from this article that I will read, because if the mystery great-great-grandmother of mine was Zuni, why was she living in Alamo? So this is a story taken from Remember Alamo, the Navajo Nation's stepchild, has found creative ways to prosper on its own by Cindy Yurth, published in the Navajo Times on September 20th, 2012. And it goes like this. Also, I put an arrow where Alamo is on the lower right-hand corner of this map. Esther Toledo, Alamo's oldest resident at 94, tells the most common version we've heard. The Dene, also called the Navajo, coming back from Fort Sumner, which is also on the map up. Where is Fort Sumner? I'll have to look on the map, but I think it's, if it's not on this one, it's at the upper right-hand corner somewhere. Coming back from Fort Sumner, were attracted by the flowing spring and protective isolation of the area and settled here rather than making the long trek to Window Rock. That's one story, says Pino. We don't count it out. There are a number of other versions, however. Navajos hunted by Kit Carson in Canyon de Chelly escaped through a southern trending side canyon and fled south. Dene, getting wind of the roundup, hid out among the Zuni before heading up at Alamo. A group of about 100 Navajos being held at Fort Wingate escaped and fled south on horseback. It's possible, says Pino, that all the stories are true, that people came to Alamo a number of different ways at different times. I don't question the elders when I talk to them, he says. I just write down what they say. There is another set of stories, however, that Pino finds even more interesting. There are those among the Alamo elders who think of themselves almost as a separate tribe. We're south of the sacred mountains, he said, but there are people who say we have our own sacred mountains here, that we had our own four worlds and our own emergence, that we have always been here. If there are Alamites, people from Alamo, ready to disown the Navajos of the Big Res, it may be turnabout. There are certainly Dene on the Big Res who think of the Southerners as Pino puts it, half Apache and half Spanish. Certainly, there were plenty of intermarriage with both groups. One has only to look at the surnames like Apachito, little Apache, and Ganadora Negro, black cattle in Spanish, and the prevalence of the Chichi Apache clan. Pino says if you listen to the elders of Alamo speak their language, you can hear traces of both Apache and a Spanish accent. So this map shows the area again. Alamo's in the lower right-hand corner. So it's possible that Zunis mixed with Spanish as well, and that maybe that's where my Zuni great-great-grandmother's mother was. So Fort Wingate would be between Sundance and South Guam on this map. If Maria Gomez, aka my Zuni great-great-grandmother, was from Alamo, see the lower right side of the map, that's where it is. It's easy to see there is not much distance to travel from Fort Wingate. My relatives told me that Jesus Landavaso, Sara's father, used to take her to see her mother in Alamo. So once again, the photo of the previous slide shows Sara Landavaso. And I want to go back to that and talk about her for a moment for the last slide. This is a photo of Sara Landavaso, which I showed you before, with her husband Claudio seated, Claudio Baca, and their son is my grandfather, who's standing up on the right, is Tranquilino Baca. And this Sara is the daughter of the Zuni native that we don't know her name, but we think is maybe Maria Gomez. And Sara was a rezadora when she lived in Atarque, a village where my family lived for a while. And a rezadora is a woman who leads prayer in her village. So women in villages like this were isolated and would lead rosaries and other forms of prayer until a priest could come about once a month to say Mass and do baptism and things like that. And my grandfather in the picture, Tranquilino, that would be his mother, Sara Landavaso. He used to have a cornfield behind his house, and when I was a little girl, I used to hang out there in the corn, and I could hear him singing like little chanting songs. I didn't understand them, but I'm thinking he learned them from his mother, Sara, and Sara learned them from her mother, the Zuni servant. Sara Landavaso was a rezadora, which means she led prayer in her village, and Tranquilino married my grandmother, Eleuteria Fernandez, and she was really into prayer. And my mother, Sara, was named after Sara Landavasu in this picture, and my mother really, really, really believed in prayer, and she had strong faith. She could move a mountain, as they say, with prayer. And that has been passed down to me because I pray constantly. And it's not like praying to a God up in the clouds. It's just speaking to the ancestors, speaking to nature, speaking to all that is, speaking to the collective. So I feel that this DNA of being a rezadora has been passed down to me as well.